listening to the Chapter a Day Bible Study. I'm John Stange, and today we're in Deuteronomy 19, Cities of Refuge and Multiple Witnesses. Deuteronomy 19 gives us a picture of what justice was meant to look like among God's people. As Moses continues preparing Israel to enter the Promised Land, he lays out instructions that protect life, guard truth, and ensure fairness. And in this chapter, we can see the heart of God, a God who cares about justice, but also makes room for mercy. The chapter begins with instructions about cities of refuge. Once Israel settles in the land, they're told to set apart specific cities where someone could flee if they unintentionally caused another person's death. In verse 2, we read, "You shall set apart 3 cities for yourselves in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess." These cities were places of protection. If someone accidentally killed someone else, they could run there and be safe from immediate revenge until a proper investigation could take place. This wasn't about excusing wrongdoing. It was about recognizing the difference between intentional violence and tragic accidents. Verse 4 explains the distinction. This is the provision for the manslayer who, by fleeing there, may save his life. If anyone kills his neighbor unintentionally without having hated him in the past. What we see here is that God was making a way for justice to be thoughtful, not impulsive. But the chapter also makes it clear that deliberate murder is a different matter. If someone intentionally took another person's life, the cities of refuge wouldn't shield them. Verse 11 says this, "But if anyone hates his neighbor and lies in wait for him and attacks him and strikes him fatally, then the elders of his city shall send and take him from there and hand him over that he may die." Justice wasn't to be avoided or softened when evil was clearly present. So we see 2 things held together: mercy for the one who didn't intend harm, and justice for the one who did. That balance reflects God's character. He isn't careless about sin, but he also isn't eager to condemn without understanding. The next instruction in this chapter deals with property boundaries. In verse 14, we read, "You shall not move your neighbor's landmark." In a culture where land represented livelihood and inheritance, moving a boundary marker was essentially theft. It was a quiet, deceptive way to take what didn't belong to you. Well, God calls his people to integrity, even in the things that others might not even notice. Then the chapter shifts to the importance of truthful testimony. In verse 15, we read this, "A single witness shall not suffice against a person for any crime." Instead, a matter had to be established by 2 or 3 witnesses, we're told as the passage continues. And this protected people from false accusations. It also ensured that justice wasn't based on weak or biased claims. And if someone did try to manipulate the system through false testimony, the consequences were serious. Verse 19 says this, "Then you shall do to him as he had meant to do to his brother. So you shall purge the evil from your midst." In other words, deception in the pursuit of justice was itself a grave offense. The chapter closes with a principle that's often quoted. In verse 21, we read, "Your eye shall not pity. It shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth." By the way, this wasn't a call for personal revenge. It was a guideline for proportional justice. Punishment wasn't to exceed the crime. Justice had limits, and those limits were to be respected. Now, as we step back a little bit and look at this chapter as a whole, we start to see how it points us toward Jesus. First, the cities of refuge give us a powerful picture of Christ. Just as someone could flee to a city for safety, we're invited to run to Jesus for refuge. Our situation is different, though. We aren't innocent people seeking protection from a misunderstanding. We're guilty people in need of mercy, and yet in Christ, we find it. The New Testament stresses this idea when it speaks of taking refuge in God. Through Jesus, we're given a place of safety from the judgment that we deserve. He doesn't ignore justice. Instead, he fulfills it on our behalf. Second, the emphasis on truth reminds us that Jesus is the ultimate standard of truth. In a world where false testimony can destroy lives, Christ stands as the faithful and true witness. He exposes lies and he brings clarity where there's confusion. At the same time, he endured false accusations himself. He was wrongly condemned so that we could be declared righteous. Third, the principle that we see here of eye for eye, it helps us understand the seriousness of sin. Justice requires a payment. Sin has consequences. But this is where the gospel becomes so meaningful, because Jesus steps in and takes the penalty we couldn't pay. The justice described in Deuteronomy finds its fulfillment at the cross. God's holiness is upheld, and his mercy is extended. In fact, in Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 and 39, Jesus said this, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also." In light of the work Jesus has done on our behalf, he invites us to live in a brand new way. So when we read Deuteronomy 19, we aren't just looking at ancient laws. We're seeing the foundation of a just and merciful kingdom. We're seeing a glimpse of the kind of world God desires, one where truth matters, and life is valued, and justice is fair. And ultimately, we're being pointed to Jesus, who is our refuge, our truth, and the one who satisfies justice on our behalf. So as we reflect on this chapter, we're invited to do more than understand it. We're invited to respond. We can run to Christ as our refuge. We can commit ourselves to truth and integrity. And we can rest in the reality that through Jesus, justice and mercy meet in a way that changes everything. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Chapter a Day Bible Study. For more resources to help you in your walk with Christ and your understanding of the Bible, please visit my website at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com. And if you'd like to partner with me by becoming a supporter of this ministry, you'll see a few options to do so, again, at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com or in the description of this episode. As always, thank you for your prayers, thank you for your support, and thank you for your willingness to share this content with others. Have a great day, and I'll see you again right here tomorrow.